पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीं यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुदस्तुन्नन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः. As you know, we are discussing the 14th chapter of the Gita, and we already started maybe the first verse. One of the most important topic discussed in this particular chapter is a great interest from the standpoint of the branch of psychology known as behavioral psychology. What it deals with this diversity of human nature. Now, from a Vedantic perspective, as you know, the whole humanity is one spiritual family. There is a divinity present in everyone. It is everywhere. And also the body-mind complex, more or less from a purely biological or physical point of view, human beings are almost identical. In many ways, of course, different in some other ways, no doubts. But there is relative identity and similarity if you analyze the human nature from an external empirical point of view, in terms of body, mind, complex. At the same time, we also know from Vedanta that the divine present in all of us. Then why is it that these 8 billion people, closely 8 billion people who inhabit this planet Earth, are so different, think differently, talk differently, and live in a totally different manner? If no two members of the same family are alike totally, no two brothers or two sisters in the same family are alike totally. There are differences. So why is this difference? Now Vedanta put forward a unique theory which really closely linked to the fundamental views of Sankhya and Yoga philosophy. We already discussed Sankhya philosophy when we are discussing Yoga Sutras. We have 68 videos in our archives, which are again cross-broadcast from other centers also, which are practically the classes sponsored by the Stanford University Hindu Students Association. And also before that we already did almost 144 audio and video classes. So all these dealing with this interesting mystery of the diversity of human nature. That's being discussed in this 14th chapter. It's one of the unique subjects being discussed in the 14th chapter. The fundamental diversity of human nature. Why people are different from each other, in spite of many similarities from an external point of view. The particular chapter is discussed. It discusses the 3 fundamental characteristics or temperaments or tendencies of human nature. It's called 3 gunas. Now, guna in Sanskrit, if you look at the dictionary, it could mean some qualities. But here it means some fundamental temperaments, characteristics. It is called 3 gunas because they are basically 3. 3 in English means 3 and also Sanskrit means 3. It's called Sattva, Rajo, Tamo, these 3 gunas. Now, at the very beginning, I can just explain the nature of these 3 gunas with the help of a parable from the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. It's called the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. There's an interesting parable in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The parable is very funny and very humorous. 3 thieves living in a forest happen to ambush a traveler taking the trail through a thick forest. These 3 thieves represent 3 gunas: Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna. The lowest, the crudest, and the most primitive, the most unevolved, let's say, the crudest, so to speak, of the thief represents Tamo guna. And what are the characteristics of Tamo guna? Ignorance, stupidity, misunderstanding, violence, recklessness, thoughtlessness, total confusion, and a kind of reckless tendency to do things, to speak things, to say things, to think things like that. This one of these thieves who represents Tamo guna, the lowest of the category. So now, how he reacts to the situation. The 3 thieves together have ambushed a helpless person walking through the forests. The thief representing Tamo guna tells, let us kill him. Let us take away all his wealth, money, property, identity card, everything, and kill him. He is so thoughtless, so cruel, so monstrous, so reckless. This is one interesting characteristic of this Tamo guna. More highly evolved among the thieves, remember all the 3, by profession they are all crooks and thieves. So that's one common factor. A more refined thief who is less violent, little more thoughtful, says, no, we need not kill him. We can give him a few blows and bind him to a tree, blindfolded. Let us do that. So that he won't chase us. He won't inform the police, inform the constabulary, so that we'll be safe. The thief representing Rajo guna. He is also violent, but he is little more of Sattva guna he has got. The sattvic quality, the thief who represents Sattva guna, a more evolved, more refined. The most refined of the 3 thieves tells them, no, don't worry, I will handle the situation. And he takes away this thief, brings him to a village, and he takes him, leads him along a road, and takes him to a village. And there is a police station, maybe nearby, maybe in ancient times, it's days of monarchy. There are maybe the king's soldiers around. So, but he doesn't go to the village. The most refined, the most cultured of the 3 thieves, he doesn't take the man to his home. He just takes him out of the thick forest and brings him to a place to a road that leads him to the village. Now you take this road. You can reach your home, you will reach your safety. But remember, even the Sattva guna, the most refined, cultured, sophisticated of the 3 thieves, he doesn't take a man to his home, because he also will be caught the police. He may be a cultured man, but by profession he is a thief, so he is also a criminal. But certainly the most cultured among the criminals, the 3, he also doesn't dare to enter the village because he will be caught and arrested by the police. These 3 thieves represent the 3 levels of evolution. Now Shankaracharya has written a marvelous commentary on this. The commentary comes on, those of you who got the text, this is 6th verse number 6 of chapter 14. The verse is this: Tatra satyam nirmalatva prakashakamanāmayam sukha sankhena badhnādi jnana sankhena cha anakha. Of these three characteristics or tendencies, that means Sattva-guna, Rajo-guna, Tamo-guna. Sattva-guna is luminous, it is healthy, it is good, but it also creates problems. That's why it is not perfect. Sattva-guna doesn't represent the perfection, but you cannot become happy you cannot become contented without this Sattva-guna. So, because even Sattva-guna binds you. Now remember, suppose you are very, very happy, very joyful, then that also becomes a bondage. So the ultimate supreme goal is to go beyond all this. So I shall read Shankaracharya's commentary, recite commentary, and then I shall explain further. Tatra sattvadhinam sattvasya eva tavad lakshanam uchyate. So we are going to have a long, interesting discussion on these three characteristics of human nature. Now remember, once we understand this psychology of gunas, we can take care of our future. We can slowly evolve from Tamo-guna, the lowest, to the next stage, Rajo-guna, the third highest stage, Sattva-guna. Then we will be able to go beyond all the three. I mentioned earlier in the previous class, from a more simplistic point of view, Tamo-guna is characterized by laziness, inaction, crudeness, violence. Nidra alasya pramadoktam tat tamasam udagatam. Gita itself says elsewhere. Sleepishness, laziness, ignorance, confusion, all that. Rajo-guna, no confusion. Better. Lot of ambition, fully focused on a definite goal, a purpose, and you devote all your time, all your energy, all your resources towards achieving that higher goal. To get a good job, work hard, get a good university degree, get a very good job, well-paid job, or maybe become a political leader. If a man with Rajo-guna tries to become the President of the United States, he will have a noble ambition. He will be happy. He wants to maybe lower the taxes, help the poorer sections of society, create employment. But at the same time, he is very dynamic, very ambitious, and to that extent, he may also be somewhat reckless. But he has a sense of principle. He won't deviate from some fundamental principles. That is the characteristic of a man with Sattva-guna. Ambitious, proud. He may be vengeful. He may take revenge. But at the same time, he has a lot of efficiency and ambition. But he wants to do something good, because a man with Rajo-guna will have a little bit of Sattva-guna. That's why he has a higher ambition. But he is ambitious and full of selfishness and desire. So in that respect, he has a lot of Rajo-guna and a lot of Tamo-guna. But he has some Sattva-guna. That's why he aims at achieving something higher in his profession. A man with Sattva-guna, he is a high idealism. Well, if you want to get an example of a man with Sattva-guna, in Western history, in the context of the history of Western civilization, I cannot think of a better name than Marcus Aurelius. He was an emperor, the Roman emperor, in the 2nd century AD. He had a lot of Sattva-guna. That's why he could share his power with his brother, his stepbrother, Lucius. And yes, he was a philosopher in a way. He had some high idealism. But still he was an emperor. So, Sattva-guna helps you to do great things, good things, with a lot of higher perspective, level-headedness, and what you call wisdom, the capital letter W. That's a very wonderful, one unique characteristic of a person endowed with Sattva-guna. It's called philosopher king. The philosophy aspect of a philosopher king belongs to higher wisdom, Sattva guna. The king aspect of a philosopher king belongs to Rajo guna. So you can find. Now Shankaracharya writes, Nirmalatva spadigamani iva prakashakam anambakam nirupadravam sattvam tat nibadhanadi. So Shankaracharya says, this Sattva guna is it's harmless. It means it's like a brilliant stainless crystal. There's a lot of quality, goodness, transparency. But at the same time, a person can also get obsessed with success and happiness. See, happiness achieved by sincere hard work is characteristic of Sattva guna. But when you become bound by that, there is a possibility that you may start descending, going down in the ladder. So that possibility is there. So, Katham sukhasangena sukhi aham idi vishebhudasya sukhasya vishayini atmani samslesha apadanam mrisha eva sukhe sajjanam iti sa esha avidya. What Shankaracharya says? It says, actually, any kind of activity, ambition, even of a man endowed with Sattva guna, which can lead to happiness, but it can eventually create a sense of invisible bondage. Sometimes when we are used to success, we are used to good things, and then we may imagine that the whole life is meant to enjoy good things, and then there is a possibility that sometimes good things will not occur, we don't find everything good or pleasant. At that time there will be a tendency to become unhappy. So, if you are looking for happiness all the time, because you are endowed with Sattva guna, then there is a possibility that one day you may be disappointed. Because there is a degree of imperfection even in Sattva guna. The ultimate goal should be to go beyond all the three gunas. But you can go beyond all the three gunas without first attaining Sattva guna. The purpose is, if you take the analogy of Sri Ramakrishna, all the three are thieves. The thief representing Sattva guna is non-violent, wise, helpful, but unfortunately, he also belongs to the category of criminals. So he may also has to face problems. So such a person cannot go to the village. If you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, it's a very wonderful analogy. High philosophy can be made clear with the help of an interesting parable. So one should try to go beyond all the three gunas, but the first step is to climb the ladder. First we must try to evolve from Tamo guna to Rajo guna. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the first chapter, Arjuna represents a man endowed with Tamo guna. He was cowardly, confused, lazy, self-deceptive. He was trying to deceive everyone, himself. He was talking the language of a Christ or a Buddha, but he was an ambitious man, a soldier. But he felt some doubt about doing his duty. So, suppose somebody, a soldier, a policeman, security guard, who's responsible for, let's say, taking care of a street or a home or a place. He reads newspapers, he gets frightened, and that day he talks about non-violence, like Gandhi. So it's a self-deception. So what it means is, that was what Arjuna was doing. It's Tamo guna. So what did Lord Krishna do? He told him, look here Arjuna, you're deceiving yourself. You are not a Buddha or a Christ or a Gandhi. I'm speaking modern language. You talk like them. You cannot be like them by talking like them. So right now you are confused. So from Tamo guna, you should first evolve yourself to Rajo guna. If you are studying for the 5th grade, you should try to work hard and get 6th grade. That's what you should do. So Shankaracharya says, even in Sattva guna there is a problem of bondage, but that is the highest state. Bondage is because frequently we may mistake Sattva guna to be highest state. So we may sometimes get too much trapped by happiness. When does happiness become a trap, a prison? When we reach a point where we cannot think of anything other than happiness. When we become totally incapable of thinking of life except living the life of a rich and happy person, which is actually unrealistic, it is impossible. So the true purpose of human life is to go beyond all the 3 gunas. This is the central message of this 14th chapter. So now I will come to the text proper. I will begin with the verse that we left behind last time. So let us begin with the first verse itself. Param bhuya pravakshami jnananam jnanamuttamam yajñatva munayas sarve param siddhim ito gataha. What it means is, I am going to discuss with you the supreme knowledge. What is the supreme knowledge? A proper understanding of what is real, what is unreal, what is eternal, what is non-eternal, what is matter, and what is the ultimate reality. So, the point is, in our life, we are mostly manipulated by matter, manipulated by these 3 gunas. That is the important thing. So, all of us in our life, in our experiences, in our reactions to different experiences, we are influenced and manipulated by Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna. So, our human nature, our tendencies, our emotions, our feelings are all like that. So, if a person really understands that these tendencies, these impressions, all these belong to matter, and matter is not eternal. Prakriti, matter, or kshetram, all these are different names used here. So we should go beyond matter. We should go beyond nature. Here, by nature, what we mean, the nature of the human mind, the nature of human emotions or human tendencies. Sometimes unhappy, sometimes happy, always struggling. So, we should go beyond a taste for happiness if we want to avoid unhappiness. So, if we want to avoid unhappiness, then we have to do small, simple thing. Stop looking for happiness all the time. It doesn't mean that we should look for unhappiness all the time. Nobody does it. But if we can always keep in mind that perpetual happiness, an unbroken succession of happy experiences is something unrealistic, is impossible, it's only a delusion, it's a myth, it can never happen. Once we understand this, and once we make this understanding a part of our emotional system, that gives us a kind of level-headedness, a sense of maturity and mental equilibrium, then we will go beyond matter, we will go beyond nature. Otherwise, we are not very different from the animal kingdom. It's a part of this evolutionary process. After all, Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna belong to Prakriti, matter, nature. And nature is constituted by these 3 gunas. So evolution is nothing but, human evolution is nothing but I'm talking about cultural evolution. It's nothing but manipulation of these three qualities. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, our first step is to get Rajo guna. Leave behind Tamo guna, have Rajo guna, and then look for Sattva guna, and then finally transcend, go beyond all the three gunas. That's an important thing. That's why in the next verse, second verse, Lord Krishna says, Idam jnanam upasitya mama sadharmya magadaha sargepi nopajayende pralaye na vyathanti cha. It has something to do with this concept of the transmigratory cycle of ancient Hindu philosophy, which is in a way common to Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Shintoism, and all other religious traditions of Indian origin, like Sikhism and so on. The idea that we are born and we live for some time, then maybe after 100 years one may die, but we be reborn again. This cyclic transmigration continues as a wheel until we realize our true nature. And realization of this true nature, according to Hinduism, is spiritual attainment. According to Buddhism, it is called nirvana. Same thing. That's all. So, now Lord Krishna says, by understanding, by getting a proper understanding of what is our body-mind complex, which is changing, relative, non-eternal, and the divine spirit within, which is unchanging and eternal. This proper understanding will help you to go beyond this transmigratory cycle. And then you will become one with Brahman. Otherwise, we will continue to be a part of this evolutionary process. Once we realize that we are not part of this evolutionary process, then we understand we are not matter. Matter, of course, body is matter. Mind also is matter according to Sankhya Yoga system. Even intellect is matter. But there is something within which is divine. It is not matter. It is the eternal spirit. That's our true identity. Once we realize this, then the transmigratory cycle doesn't bother. Whether we live, whether we die, or anything, it doesn't bother us. So it is a very high state of spiritual philosophical wisdom. Actually, I can tell you from the standpoint of very simple common psychology, most of our problems we face in this world, especially this depression, which is common, the high percentage of youngsters suffering from depression in America. If you go deeper into this, of course, professional psychologists, psychiatrists may not agree with. It's not because it is wrong, but because that may challenge their own livelihoods. So the point is, if we can convince ourselves that we are something that's beyond this mind, beyond our own emotions, and we are only a witness of our own emotions, we are only a witness of our own thoughts, then the I can detach myself from my thoughts and my worries and my anxieties and my depressions. Once we identify ourselves with every small little incident that happens around us and react or overreact, there is no end to problem. If we can witness our own mind, if we can witness our own emotions, suppose we feel somewhat unhappy. I am becoming unhappy. Why? Because I lost my job. So I am becoming unhappy. But losing a job is not the end of the day. We get a job. We know that. Everyone understands this. Of course, very often we are not able to make proper use of more. We are not able to make practical use of what we actually know. So Vedanta is nothing but application of what we already know in our everyday life, in one way. So Maybe the difference between a man like Marcus Aurelius, I'm just speaking in the context of history of Western civilization, the difference between Marcus Aurelius and maybe Attila the Hun, or maybe even Napoleon, who had a miserable end after all, the difference is this man, Marcus Aurelius, philosophically he must have reached a conclusion that success and failure are empirical. He may not have a philosophical system to interpret it, but one can reach this level of evolution of maturity and wisdom in any culture, in any tradition. So once we can convince ourselves, our own anger, our own worries, our own anxieties, and also success and failures, success, victories and defeats, profit and loss, all these are relative, they are the empirical level, and we should ourselves act as a subject witnessing an object, as a witness. Once we can do that, you find we will be able to get a handle on our own mind, our own emotions. Anyone can try. Suppose we become worried unnecessarily. Pause for a minute. Why am I becoming worried? And if you can objectify your own worry, or you can watch your own anger, observe that you are becoming angry, then you find anger comes down. Worry also comes down. It doesn't mean that we should not react, we should not solve the problem. We should work hard to solve the problem. We should strive hard to find a solution to the problems that cause worries. But worry itself is absolutely a very unintelligent way of responding to a situation. So, in a way, this is a higher goal. But here, Lord Krishna says, once you identify, once you get back to your own identity as the eternal, all-seeing witness, and not changing objects. You are not changing objects, we are witness. I am not angry, but I am a witness of my own anger. I need not be anxious, but I am a witness of my own anxiety. Then anxiety comes down. If we don't do that, what happens? We identify ourselves with anger. So anger and the person who is getting angry become one. But once you understand, once we realize we are the divine, we are the eternal, the non-material, not the non-matter, so to speak. And anatma in here. We are not prakriti, we are the divine. Once we realize this, we can actually conserve a lot of energy that is normally lost, that's dissipated by our emotions and feelings, anxieties and worries. Lord Krishna says the highest goal is to remain unchanged, remain a witness in birth, in life, death and rebirth. We are witnessing this rotating wheel, but we are not part of it. That's the implication in the second verse. It's a very profound, but at a lowest practical level, this is a fact. Everything in this world, success and failure, profit and loss, are changing. So why can't we witness them instead of identifying with them? No identification, but seeing them, witness them. It doesn't mean that we should become insensitive, irresponsible, or inactive. Not at all. We should be active, but the moment we become too much identified with the problem, and when it causes a lot of headache, then we can detach ourselves from it and say, well, I am observing all this happening in my own emotional system. Then you can be a witness of your own emotions. This continues. Of course, in the third verse, there is a very philosophical discussion. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadhamikam sambhava sarva bhudanam tato bhavadi bharata. What it says is simple. Now, It says, Mama Yonin Mahat Brahma. See, this cosmic mind, the cosmic mind of emotions and feelings, tendencies and thoughts, when these emotions and feelings and tendencies, when they get attached, when they get associated with the spirit, with the divine, then creation happens. But when they get dissociated, then dissolution happens. So what it means is, whatever emotions and feelings in our mental system, they become active not by themselves, but when they are associated with the divine. But once we understand that emotions and feelings are relative and changing and changeable, but the divine is eternal, and that's our true nature, and we identify ourselves with that divine, then we are the witness, we are not the witnessed, we are not the object, we are the subject. This idea continues, Sarva yonishu kaundeya murtaya sambhavantiyaha tasam brahma mahad yonihi ayam aham bija pradapida. It's a human way of putting this cosmic process of evolution and development. I mean, it's just is a allegorical or maybe a symbolic way of putting things in the language of metaphor. I mean, just like the birth of a human being, like that, the divine enlivens, so to speak, puts the spirit in emotions and feelings, then the creation begins. Of course, the fifth, Sattvam Rajas Tama iti guna prakriti sambhavaha. Nibadhanti mahabaho dehi nam avyen. This is a very philosophical term. Sattvam Rajas Tama iti. Three gunas, Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna. They actually bind us to this world because they are born in nature according to yoga system and Sankhya system. This nature, this prakriti, we call prakriti, or maybe the material universe, cosmos, it is activated, it's constituted by these three gunas, these three temperaments. So these three gunas are temperaments, characteristics, and also they are the constituents of our emotional and psychological world, the world of emotions, feelings and thoughts. And they are born of nature. Again, they are not eternal. There are three levels of human emotions and feelings. We can ourselves evolve further. I mentioned this earlier in the previous class. We can climb the steps and reach a higher level of evolution. From Tamo guna, we can go to Rajo guna. That's what Lord Krishna asked Arjuna to do. When Arjuna expressed his inactivity, his laziness, his delusions and his ignorance, then Lord Krishna asked him, you work with a lot of ambition, a lot of pride, a sense of goal. Krishna did not ask Arjuna to practice karma yoga at the beginning, no. Suppose a person who is lazy, sitting, so a student who is highly confused, maybe suffering from some problems, and he cannot work hard, he cannot read books, he should work hard to get a higher grade. It's a matter of his livelihood, getting his livelihood. Parents force him, teachers force him, but he cannot do anything. What you should do, the right medicine for him is this: work hard, try to become a CEO of a big company, make a lot of money, lot of wealth. That's a message meant for a student, an inactive person. Because an inactive person, because of laziness, the lowest level. From that, he should reach a level of other human beings. For that, he needs Rajo guna. So he should work hard. He should become ambitious for a higher purpose. He can be selfish, because that's better than being totally inactive. A kind of state of moron, we call idiots and moron, 2 stages below the normal level. From that, he should reach the state of a normal, ambitious human being. That's why there is an interesting verse in Gita where Lord Krishna tells, it's a very, very significant. He says, don't tell a person is totally deluded and inactive. Don't talk to him about karma yoga. You should do without any selfish purpose. He is not doing anything anyway. He is lying somewhere and he says, I don't want money. At the same time, he depend upon others. He is poor. He can do a job if he wants, but he is unwilling because of his laziness. And he thinks that's the best way of life. And he wants to be a philosopher. He wants to become a Sattva guna. It's impossible. So the first step for him is, first you shed his laziness. Work hard for a higher purpose. Na buddhivedam janayet ajnanam karma sankinam, Lord Krishna says. So a person who is inactive, lazy, and highly hypocritical is talking the language of renunciation. At the same time, he is also dependent upon others. Not because he has no money, he cannot do anything. That's a state of mind. For him, the first state is to become ambitious, active with a purpose and goal. That is Rajo guna. Next, Sattva guna. When you work too hard, when you become very efficient, very successful, then you reach a point, well, this is not enough. You look for something higher. In fact, that's how you become a philosopher king. Then you become a sattvic person. And at the end of this evolution, you transcend all these three levels. Then you find all these Tamo guna, Rajo guna, Sattva guna, all these are changing situations at the normal human level, empirical level. That's not my true nature. I am a witness of these three gunas. I am not identifying myself with any of these three gunas. So, Lord Krishna says, we are actually the divine, the spirit, the divine spark, but we are imprisoned, we are bound, because we identify ourselves with these Sattva guna, Rajo guna and Tamo guna. When we mention this, we should remember all great spiritual teachers were embodiments of Sattva guna. Because when you transcend all these three states, then you cannot do anything. So in order to do something good for this world, even the highest philosophers and saints like Sri Ramakrishna talks about Shankaracharya, he reached the highest state. But if you just, something very interesting, if you look at the amount of work that men like Vivekananda or Shankaracharya or Sri Ramakrishna or Jesus Christ, Buddha lived a long life, 80 years. The others were short-lived. Shankara for 32 years, Swami Vivekananda for 39 years, Christ for 30 years, Buddha for 80 years. If you just look at their life, they were hyperactive. So you may like to call, they were all Rajo guna, they have plenty of Rajo guna. Lot of ambition, no. They were so hyperactive, still zero Rajo guna. Why? They had no ambition, no selfish motive. They did not do anything for themselves. All the great things they did, they were active all their life, they did only for the good of others. So, a person endowed with Sattva guna is never inactive. I would rather say the most accomplished, the most active, the most successful executives and CEOs of the world were the great spiritual leaders. Because what they taught, what they lived for, we still enjoy. Christ passed away 2000 years ago. Shankara lived for, how many years? 32 years. Now, whatever we have in Hinduism is his legacy. The most profound philosophical books, the most wonderful devotional poetry, all the great temples that you find in India were sanctified by him, and the monasteries and 10 monastic orders. 10 monastic orders. Sister Nivedita makes an interesting summary of Shankaracharya's work. And she talks about the personality. She says, Ignatius Loyola founded the Jesuit order. And the great theologians like Aquinas, Augustine, and Everall, they also did things. But they were not the writers of the most profound poetry in Latin. And they did not found so many monastic orders and install so many temples and travel all over Indian subcontinent, which are as big as Europe, 4 times. From Chinese border to the extreme southern point, close to Sri Lanka. From Arabian Ocean to Bay of Bengal, 4 times. Within 32 years. Vivekananda, he lived for only 39 years. So Christ 30 years. And today you can find for the 2000 years he has inspired and he had inspired so many philosophers, thinkers, mystics and so on. So can you name one CEO of modern times who are as efficient, as active, as busy as a Christ or a Shankara? You cannot name one. How could? And they were all embodiments of Sattva guna. So a person endowed with Sattva guna becomes hyperactive, but not for themselves, for others. That's the main difference. So I mentioned this earlier. So such a person, he has already transcended all the 3 gunas, but in order to do something, in order to accomplish their spiritual mission, they make use of their Rajo guna. So a person endowed with Sattva guna is not opposed to Rajo guna, rather they are not enslaved, they are not bound by Rajo guna. A person, an individual who has only Rajo guna, he is bound. You can see people, I cannot keep quiet for a minute. I should be always active. And he is very boastful about it. Actually, it is not something to be complimented for. It is a problem, not something to be complimented for. I cannot remain quiet for a minute. I am always active. I should do something all the time. Well, that's certainly better than being lazy, but certainly not the highest thing. So all these great men and women, you can Joan of Arc or Saint Teresa of Avila, there are also examples for women folk, both in the East, in India, and also in Europe, America maybe. So among saints, women folk also, Saint Teresa of Avila. So they did a lot of great things. So the point is, what Lord Krishna says is, we should not be bound by any of the 3 gunas. For that we should go beyond the 3 gunas, and then you'll be guided by Sattva guna, and you'll assume a lot of Rajo guna only for doing great things without any selfish motive. This is a very interesting study, this 14th chapter, of the human nature and human temperaments. And interestingly, you find as we proceed, we find there is a ladder. There's a track you can follow. One can climb the steps and reach higher and higher levels of evolution. We can check for ourselves. Am I too active, ambitious, without any purpose? It's a problem. So we can check ourselves. Once we through the flashlight into our own mind, then we can very easily understand where we stand, where we belong, and we can move forward from where we stand now. So thank you. We have now interaction. You are most welcome to ask questions. Thank you.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om, yeah.
Do you think that acknowledgement of our impermanence and the detachment from that Tattwamasi, the detachment from the pursuit of happiness?
Excuse me, Tattwamasi you mentioned?
Tattwamasi,
yeah.
The acknowledgement that I am that, I am part of that.
Yeah.
The contentment is what Krishna's referring to when he talks about in chapter 6 in Dhyana Yoga. 647 he says, a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, greater than some other things. And then he says, therefore, O Arjuna, be a yogi. Do you think that that's a precursor to the 14th chapter?
Yeah. Tapasibhyo digo yogi jnanibhyo vimato digaha karmibhyo adhigo yogi tasmad yogi bhava Arjuna. What it means is, yogi is greater than those who practice austerities, and this the implication is there are some people who practice a lot of rituals. You'll understand this better if I talk like this. There are people who practice a lot of rituals, monthly rituals, certain specific seasons, Krishna, Chandra, there are all these rituals, Amavasya, you find among Hindu traditional people. Once in 2 weeks, certain rituals, once in 1 month, certain rituals, certain seasons. There are people who practice all this with great austerity, dedication. Okay. A yogi is far higher than such a person. And again, those who have only intellectual knowledge, only the knowledge of books, yogi is greater than him. So, jnanibhyaha adhiga means yogi is higher than jnanibhyaha, means yogi is higher than those who have got only philosophical knowledge, scriptural knowledge. It is not Tattwamasi, it's not the experience. So when Lord Krishna says that a yogi is higher than a jnani, yogi is higher than a person of knowledge, that knowledge is not knowledge of experience, knowledge of only the words, sentences, knowledge of books. So a yogi is higher than just a ritualist, the person who performs in mechanical rituals. Yogi is higher than a person who just has read number of books. And again, a yogi is higher than certain individuals who perform Vedic yajnas, Vedic rituals, elaborate rituals. Lot of things they carry, they go on doing things. Yogi is a person who has brought yoga, the union between the individual soul and the universal. He has brought the divine into his life. He is a person who has boarded the bus which is moving towards his destination. So you should remember that the literal translation may not be satisfactory. So, tapasibhyaha adhigo yogi. Yogi is higher than tapasvis. Tapa actually means austerities. I mean those who mechanically fast certain days, certain practicing mauna vrata, silence for certain days. That's all, in a mechanical way. And also yogi is higher than a person who has just number of books. And reading books is very good, but that's not ultimate purpose. It's not a moving bus. You are only on your way to a place where you may find a bus that is ready to take you to destination. Yoga is a bus that is already running towards a destination. You boarded the bus. That is yoga. Is clear to you? Yeah. So remember, there are 3 words mentioned: tapa, jnanam, and karma. All these 3 words are mentioned. I mean, yogi is higher than those who practice austerities, tapasibhyaha. Yogi is higher than a person who just knows some books, a philosopher, a professor of philosophy. Yogi is also higher than a person who is performing elaborate rituals, spending lots of money in a big exhibiting all his pompous. A yogi, on the other hand, he is trying to practice in his inner life some higher values. That's the meaning here. It's clear to you? Okay. So this is the 46th verse of the 6th chapter. Thank you.
Swamiji,
Yeah.
I guess in an attempt to better understand where I fit in, can a person be sort of a little bit of all three gunas, like depending on the task at hand or time of day or day of week? Or is it really, if you experience all three, you're essentially at the bottom of the three gunas, which is the tamaguna?
Could you repeat the question once more?
Yeah, I'll repeat again. So I guess the question is, can a person be all three gunas at once in a way, like depending on the task at hand? Depend on the task at hand. So for example,
task.
If you're super interested in the type of work that you're doing, you may be the Sattva and another type of work you probably are Tamaguna. Or even like weekdays versus weekends, you may feel one or the other. Can you sort of be all three, or is essentially are you at the bottom?
Question is very clear. Thank you. So the idea is, this Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna, these three characteristics are not directly linked to the work you are doing, rather the attitude with which you do the work. So an individual endowed with lot of Sattva guna, he will be able to, or she will be able to do the humblest of menial work with perfect sanctity, the sense of sanctity, sacredness, and total contentment. So he will be able to do very painful, very boring, very unpopular kind of work. He will be able to do with total dedication, and not only that, not dedication alone, but a sense of inner contentment and fulfillment. In fact, that's the criterion for judging whether a person is endowed with Sattva guna or not. From doing what he's doing, is he getting a kind of total inner fulfillment? Not just satisfaction as we understand it, but a kind of inner fulfillment. A teacher who spends his lot of time to teach properly, dedicated to his profession, when he gets information that one of his students has done extremely well, an outstanding performance, maybe the student may not acknowledge it, but still in his inner mind, he feels, I've done my work, I've done that kind of fulfillment. That's an attitude of Sattva guna. If a person has got Rajo guna, then he will declare. He will go and take a photograph with the student, and he may also try to make use of that for publicity, for starting his own tutorial, and make some money out of it. Man with Rajo guna. Of course, those who with Tamo guna, they will never be able to accomplish. That's a different question. So that's an important. So it's a matter of our attitude and how we respond to our own experiences. This idea behind. Our own response to our own experiences. When something that makes us happy takes place, how we respond? Are we overjoyed? It is the Rajo guna. If we are happy but we are self-restrained, it is Sattva guna. The self-restrained aspect is a unique feature of those who have got Sattva guna. Okay, thank you. This chapter in that respect is like a mirror that is placed in front of you. So you can see yourself and understand where you stand. That's an interesting aspect of this chapter. Please continue. Please.
Swamiji, I'm always trying to find sort of the correspondence between Buddhism and Vedanta. So I think you said at one point tonight that you could look at Prakriti as anatman. Is that a useful...
Property?
Prakriti.
Prakriti.
Is anatman.
Anatman, yeah.
Is that a correspondence that you could make? Using the Buddhist idea of anatman as Prakriti?
Yeah, it's different. Totally different. In Buddhism, Anattavada, they call in Pali, Anatmavada in Sanskrit. What it means is the doctrine of non-eternal. The doctrine that says that there is nothing which is eternal, permanent, like Atman. That's the foundation of Buddhism, especially Mahayana Buddhism. But what it implies is, if you go deeper, it's called the Praditya Samutpada, the doctrine of dependent origination, which is also an important foundational doctrine of Buddhism, which explains the entire universe and also our human life in terms of 12 links, past, present and future, all interdependent and all caused by desire. So everything is caused by something else, called dependent origination. The doctrine of dependent origination is called. So Buddhism doesn't believe that there is anything like Atman, which is eternal, which is permanent, which is all the time. But there is an interesting thing about Buddhism, they believe that you attain nirvana. And they also believe that when you attain nirvana, the liberation, you attain Buddhahood. It's called the Tathagata Garbha, Tathagata. I mean, it's an involved system of philosophy. Reach a point when you become like Buddha. Now that state is an ultimate goal of every Buddhist. So that state is not a changeable, not a state of relativity. It is a state of eternal self-fulfillment. So practically it is not different from the Vedantic doctrine of Atman being eternal, unchanging and absolute reality. So this is an important thing. But in Vedanta, please listen, in Vedanta, the word, when we say Prakriti is anatma, what it means is Prakriti is non-eternal, Prakriti is impermanent, Prakriti is changeable, Prakriti is only relative, Prakriti is a state of flux. That's the implication in Vedanta when we say Prakriti is anatma. So anatma, the concept of anatma in Buddhism is totally and completely different from what it implies in Vedanta when we say Prakriti or Kshetram is anatma. It is non-eternal, that's the idea. Remember one thing, right. You see, Buddhism leaves many unanswered questions. As a metaphysical system, Buddhism has some loose ends. And that may be partly because Buddha himself chose not to answer some fundamental questions of metaphysics. When Buddha was asked some questions of some eternal divine reality, Buddha evaded, he was very evasive. He was not willing to give a definite answer. So when a question, for example, put to him about God, he say, have you seen God? Have your father seen God? Have your grandfather seen God? And like that. Then he said, then why do you worry about it? So I don't say Buddhism was an empirical philosophy, but Buddhism leaves some loose ends at the transcendental metaphysical level. Maybe because of the circumstances under which Buddha had to teach. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. Just to maybe again, this is not really that important. Maybe it's just hair splitting, but I guess to try to find some, the Buddhists, I believe they talk about unconditioned versus conditioned. Nirvana is being maybe unconditioned, yeah, where all phenomenal realities look at as conditioned. Yeah. How could you explain a little bit about conditioned versus unconditioned?
Yeah.
Using Vedanta and Buddhism?
Yeah, that's right. I tell you. So I'm coming to that. Now, you see, Buddhism says certain things which can certainly be linked to Vedanta, but Buddhists themselves do not admit that. According the philosophical system that comes closest to Vedanta is a Vijnanavada, maybe, and also Shunyavada. In Shunyavada, in Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karya, it's a Bible of Shunyavada with Chandrakirti's commentary. He says, Buddha taught two fundamental truths. One is Samvriti Satyam and Paramarthika Satyam. One is Samvriti Satya, that's meaning Vyavaharika, which means relative. Everything, all these phenomenal, empirical things are Samvriti Satya, means relative, non-eternal, conditioned, changing, to be transcended. And Satyamcha Paramarthadaka. De Satya Samvasitya Buddhanam Dharmaseshada Loka Samvrti Satyamcha Satyamcha Paramarthadaka. This is from Madhyamika Karika, which is the Bible of the doctrine of emptiness, I mean Sunyavada system of Buddhism is called the idealistic school of Buddhism. The other one is Vijnanavada, the second idealistic school. So what it says is, Dve Satya Samupasitya Buddhanam Dharmaseshata. Buddha's teachings are based on two fundamental teachings. One is truth. One is Loka Samvrti Satyamcha. I mean, this empirical world, all this particular Prakriti, this conditioned phenomenal world is relative, non-eternal, changing, to be transcended. The other one is Satyamcha Paramarthadaha, means the second teaching is Paramartha Satyam, that is Shunya. But the Paramartha Satyam was called Shunya by Buddha. Shunya means nothingness. So that created problems at the level of Buddhist dialectics. So, Buddhism developed a very interesting, a highly involved school of dialectics. There were, you can imagine the period between, let us say, 1st century AD to 7th century AD. During this time, there was an interesting warfare. Can you imagine a time when great philosophers, great theologians, great dialecticians were arguing in big assemblies, arguing in different schools of philosophy, not fighting with each other, not cursing each other, exchanging great grand ideas. So, Dignaga, Vasubandhu, Chandrakirti, many others, Dhammapala, many others. Of course, the greatest of them were Nagarjuna himself. So, all these great philosophers wrote books which were actually, they were criticized Vedic ritualism, not Vedanta, Vedic ritualism. When Buddhists criticized Vedic tradition, they were not criticizing Vedanta, they were criticizing Vedic ritualism. The idea that Vedas are meant to perform external rituals, which Shankaracharya also criticized. So, among these dialecticians, a number of doctrines evolved within India, but this metaphysical warfare was totally absent outside India. Buddhism traveled to China, Tibet, Japan, all these countries, Mahayana Buddhism. Then it went to Burma, went to Sri Lanka, especially in the early days. Ashoka's daughter, Sankhamitra, herself was a Buddhist ambassador to Sri Lanka. So the Hinayana system called Pali canonical literature. So the point is, they developed a lot of dialectical ideas, and so there are many ideas. But main point is, the Sunyavada doctrine that Shunya, the nothingness, is the ultimate reality, that was questioned by Advaitins, Vedantins, say that from nothingness, this creation, the world cannot come into existence. So that's an important doctrine. So you can listen to my series of lectures, the foundational text of Indian philosophy, which which I've been conducting for the last almost 26 sessions already over. The Stanford Hindu Students Association sponsored program, where we discuss different scriptures. You can, if you are interested, you can listen to discussions thread by of many of the canons of Buddhist tradition, Vedanta tradition, different schools of Vedanta. This Bhagavad Gita class here in Old Temple is somewhat simple, a simplified version. You should not feel insulted. This is a very simplified version, but a more academic type of discussion we do every Sunday, 6 o'clock. Every Sunday, 6 o'clock. The foundational text of Indian philosophy, 26 sessions already over. And whenever I'm around here, we will conduct the class. Next class is day after tomorrow. So in course of time, you find we will take up Nagarjuna, Dignaga, all the great Buddhist scholars, philosophers, outstanding dialecticians. We will discuss. Thank you for the question. Namaskar. Okay, thank you. We will conclude now. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.